Whether you're new to AI agents and looking to get started, or you've used Agentuity in the past but want to know exactly what we have to offer, the kitchen sink is the perfect project for you. It gives you 20 plus AI agents all wrapped up into a single project that you can easily deploy and try out yourself. You get to test drive the entire Agentuity SDK in minutes and really learn by doing. So today I'm going to walk you through how to get set up and get started with the kitchen sink. Let's begin. Hey there, my name is Partik. I'm a DevRel here at Agentuity, and today I want to show you our brand new kitchen sink project. So once you get set up in your IDE, you'll see all the different agents, and we recommend that you start off with these handler examples because they show you the basics of how agents work on Agentuity. So if we head over to the handler request example and we take a look, you'll see that there's this agent function, and each agent in Agentuity gives you access to a request, response, and context object. And of course, this one's going to talk about everything that you can do with the request object. The first thing you'll notice is that we get a data property and a content type property within that request object. So you can handle things like JSON data using request.data.json, or do things like plain text using request.data.text. And there's a whole bunch of other things like binary, buffer, and even things like email and SMS. Another thing that the request object lets you do is handle the trigger, which can be different depending on how you want to invoke your agent. So in this case, the manual trigger is when you're running things in dev mode and trying things out locally. But there's also options for things like agent, cron, email, and more. So that's for when you want to invoke your agent from another agent, set up a cron job so your agent can run on a schedule, or even send an SMS or an email to get your agent to start running. You can even do things like pass custom headers, but for now, what we're going to do in this example is just return some text using the response object. We'll look at that in a second. But we'll see the agent return the content type and the trigger, and also show us some metadata that you get with the request object. And down here, you have this welcome function with some prompts, and that's just how you test things out locally in dev mode. So that's what you'll see in the console or the UI. So let's go ahead and actually launch dev mode. We'll just run the Agentuity dev command, and once that loads up, we can actually test this agent out. Okay, so once all of the agents within the project are loaded, we can follow this link. And once you pull that up, you'll see some information about this handler request example, and we'll also tell you how you can test it out. And for most of these agents, you can also type help at any time to learn more about this feature. But if you want to ask further questions, we recommend you select that kitchen sink agent, and there you can ask it anything you want about Agentuity. But let's go ahead and send a plain text request and see what happens. So our agent was able to tell us that we sent a plain text message and that we triggered it using dev mode, so a manual trigger. And it was able to give us some metadata back as well. And of course, we can quickly try out the JSON example and see that it can detect that it was a JSON message. It's still a manual trigger, and it sends us back that metadata. So that's the request example, but we can go ahead and go down the list, take a look at the response example, and see all the different types of data and what we can do when we're responding from an agent. So let's go ahead and do that. And we can read this to see some more information about what this is and how to test it. But let's go ahead and click on this image option, and we'll see if our agent can respond with an image. And there you go, it responded with the Agentuity logo. So let's go back and see if it can send us back a plain text message. And it can do that as well. So we've seen kind of how it works, but let's go ahead and take a look at the code and look under the hood to see what we're doing with the SDK to actually allow for this. So if we head over to the handler response and take a look at that code, you'll see that we take the incoming prompt, and depending on which prompt we selected in the dev mode UI, we'll go ahead and respond accordingly. So the first one is showing us how we can respond with an image using response.png and giving it a test image. Of course, we can also respond with plain text, and you can even do things like stream content using the stream text from the Vercel AI SDK in this case. But as you can see, we can return that stream using the result and send that back in markdown formatting. And there's a bunch of other things that you can do. You can return binary data, HTML, JPEG, MP4, and so on and so forth. And there's even this response.handoff, which we'll take a look at later on in the IO agent example. But that pretty much does it for this example. The rest is just the welcome function. And let's go ahead and take a look at the third and final object, which is the context object. So let's head over to the handler context And now you'll see that this one gives you, first and foremost, access to some session data. So from that context object, you can check your SDK version, you can check the session ID, the deployment ID, the project ID, even the name of the agent itself. And down here, we're just going to return that data. And of course, now that we've seen the response example, we know that we have a couple of different options for how to respond from an agent and what you can do with that. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and use Markdown to format that nicely. But we're learning a bit about how agents work and what you can do with them. Another thing that you can do with the context object is list all the different agents from within a project. So we're also going to do that here, just list the top 3 agents. And again, we're just going to respond with Markdown formatting showing the first 3 available agents. Now, the context object gives you a lot more than just metadata and session data. It's actually how you interact with all 3 of our storage APIs, namely the key value, object storage, and vector storage. It's also how you log and trace data and do things like agent-to-agent communication and even email IO. And of course, we can take a look at these when we get to those examples, but for now, let's go ahead and just try out a few of these prompts and see what the context object can do. So in the dev mode, we're just going to go ahead and send session data as a prompt, and we can see what that code actually does. We can get our SDK version, things like the org ID and the deployment ID, and even the agent name itself. So pretty cool. And this kind of gives you a good foundation for the different things that you can do with agents, but there's a lot of other cool things to show, and let's quickly walk through those as well. So to see a few more cool examples, let's go ahead and go down the list and look at this frameworks provider example. And one thing that we're really proud of here at Agentuity is the fact that we're platform agnostic. So you can run different agent frameworks side by side in the same project or even in the same agent itself. So that's what we do here is within one agent, we're running 2 different frameworks. And let's go ahead and actually try this out first before we even look at the code. So we're going to send that agent off and tell it to tell us a short story. And we can see that it's streaming back a response for us. And we use the Vercel AI SDK. And we also used Mostra as well, which is pretty awesome, right? From one agent, we were able to use 2 different frameworks, and it was super easy. So how do we actually do this with the actual SDK? We can hop back to the code and actually take a look. So if we head over to the frameworks provider example, it's super easy to set this up in Agentuity. So the first example is just the Vercel AI SDK. And we're just going to select the model and tell it to create a short story based on the prompt that we sent it. And it's super easy to set up a Mostra agent as well using their framework and returning a response from that agent as well. So we're just going to use Mostra to do that. And at the end, we're just going to grab the text from both of those results and use that response object, setting it up in Markdown formatting. And so I think this is a really cool example, and it shows just how easy it is to set up different frameworks and use them within even a single agent. But there's a few other agents I want to show you. So another example is this gateway provider. And we're really proud of the fact that we have an AI gateway, which means we automatically route your request to the model that you choose. And that makes it really easy for you so you don't have to dangle a bunch of API keys or handle billing across different providers. You can do that all in one place. So if we take a look at the code for this one, you'll see that we've set up an example using OpenAI and Google. And since we're using the Vercel AI SDK, it's even simpler. All we're doing is just swapping out the model from GPT-5 Nano to Gemini Flash 2.0. And we're telling it to do the same thing, right? Just tell a story based on the incoming prompt. And again, at the end, we're just going to return a Markdown formatted response. And let's go ahead and test this out to see what it does. So if we run that gateway provider agent, we should see one example from OpenAI and another from Google. Again, all within the same project, within the same agent. And there you go, we get that text streaming in, and we can see the different response from 2 different models. So this is another really cool feature that I love because you can kind of test out how different models handle the things that you want to do with your agents. And you can kind of fine tune your projects to use the best aspects of something like GPT-5 and even use something like Flash for other use cases. Now, another really cool example is this IO agent, which tells you how we handle agent-to-agent communication on our platform. So if we take a look at this code, you can see that the first example is using handoff. So we have this response.handoff method. And what that lets you do is basically delegate a task to a different agent. So you can just hand off and let that other agent be responsible for actually processing the request. So in this case, we're just going to give it the name of the gateway provider. So we're using a different agent within our project. and just giving it some data, telling it to tell us a short story. And from there, since that other agent is responsible for actually responding, we don't need to return anything here. Now, another option you have is to run another agent and actually wait for a response from that agent. So to do that, we can use this context.getAgent and give it the name of another agent in our project. And that'll give you a handle on this agent, and you can use that to invoke the run method and send it some data. And now, since we're using the run method, we'll actually wait for a response and return it from within this IO agent. So a couple different ways to handle agent-to-agent communication, but this example shows you both of those. And of course, you can also fetch from your agents if you give them a public webhook or a public API, and we also show you how to do that here. But let's go ahead and take a look at how this run and this handoff would work when we're testing it in dev mode. So over in dev mode, we can go ahead and try out the handoff prompt and see what that does. And as you can see, that'll return a response from OpenAI and Google, which is exactly what we did with the gateway provider. So if we take a look at the code again, we can see that using the response.handoff, we were able to just delegate this task to the gateway provider, which does its own thing and gives us a story using both OpenAI and Google as the underlying model. And now let's go ahead and take a look at this agent.run and see what that does. So if we go ahead and send that command and kick off our agent, it'll send us the response back, but it'll actually wait for the response and return the text directly from this agent. But you can see that it kind of does the same thing. So you have multiple options for how you want to handle things when you're using multiple agents in an Agentuity project. And so there's quite a few more examples here, but we'll really quickly walk through the code because I think they're really cool use cases. And then we'll come back and actually try out one of these storage examples to show you how you can interact with our storage APIs. So if we head back to the code, let's take a look at this IO email example. And this will show you how you can handle email triggers, get some data, and actually send a response back directly from within an agent. So if we take a look and we remember the request example, you'll see that we can use request.trigger and set that to email to only handle when we get email triggers. So this is kind of a way to set up your agents so that depending on the trigger, you do different things. And so here we're going to go ahead and just grab that request.data.email, get the subject, the sender, the actual text, the HTML body, and you can even do things like grab the attachments from an email sent to your agent. And you can really easily send a reply back using the email.sendReply and give it a subject, a text, so on and so forth. And so this one's just going to send a simple reply back and kind of echo the message that was sent. And it's pretty similar for SMS as well. So you can actually text your agent if you set it up with a number. Again, you can use request.trigger is equal to SMS, get that SMS data, including the phone number and the message, and similarly send a reply back. And the last agent that I want to show off is this key value storage, and it'll kind of give you a sense for how to store some data using your agents and give them some working memory. So if we come down here and take a look, we're going to give our KV store a bucket name and then store a bunch of entries using different keys with a timestamp. So down here, we're just going to take the incoming prompt as the request data and store some plain text content using this context.kv.set. And we give it the bucket name, the key, and the incoming data. And we can set a TTL of 60 seconds in this case and give it the content type as well. From there, we can use the kv.get method to actually grab the content stored within that bucket at that key, and then use the kv.delete in the same way to delete some entries. And of course, we can do the same thing with JSON content and so on and so forth. And so let's go ahead and try this out to see what this looks like. And so back in dev mode, if we go ahead and send a plain text example, the agent's going to respond with that same text. And looking at the code, since we went ahead and deleted that immediately, that won't get stored. But we actually have an example called example chat that allows you to store a few messages and keep track of a messages array to kind of create a chat history using KV store. So the same concepts apply, but it kind of shows you how to do a bit more with that. And so one final thing that I want to show is this test suite agent, which we try and make pretty clear is not intended to be run externally, but we actually run this every night on a cron to test out if all the different agents in the kitchen sink are working. And by extension, it tests if our SDK is up and running and working. And what it does is it's just going to use all the different welcome prompts, some of the prompts that you see in dev mode that you can click on, it's going to go through and use all the different ones for all these agents and log if we have any errors. And we've actually used this to detect a few bugs and errors in our SDK, so it's been really useful for us already. So that pretty much wraps it up, and we walked through a few agents, but there's plenty more, and we'd love for you to check it out. We really hope that the kitchen sink helps you onboard and better learn our platform and how to actually use our SDK. So please give it a try and let us know what you think. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.